My name is Jacob Sutton, and I'll be presenting my research analysis on the journal article, Deciding to Cross Norms in Economics of Unauthorized Migration. This article was published in August of 2013 by Emily Rio, the main researcher of the article, in the American Sociological Review. The question being researched is why there are so many unauthorized migrants in the United States. The independent variables are split into two different categories for the main analysis. The independent variables from the relevant subjective cost-benefit calculator are 1. Expected profitability of finding a job in the U.S. and in Mexico. 2. Expected wages in the U.S. and in Mexico. 3. Expected monetary costs of migrating. 4. Expected degree of danger associated with crossing the border. 5. Expected probability of apprehension at the border and while working illegally in the U.S. And 6. Expected severity of sanctions if apprehended at the border and while working illegally in the U.S. The independent variables from the prospective migrants' underlying attitudes, values, and social norms are 1. General attitudes towards any law, not just U.S. law. 2. Views about the morality of violating U.S. immigration law. 3. Views about the legitimacy of U.S. authority to regulate international migration. And 4. Social norms about border crossing. The dependent variables were coded as 1 or 0, 1 being if the respondent intended to cross the border without documentation, and 0 for otherwise. The main hypothesis of the study is that there is a determinant for the decision to migrate illegally by comparing a correlation between the independent variables that were noted and the respondent's answer to migrate illegally to the U.S. in the next 12 months. The research method used to gather was the survey method. The Becoming a Legal Survey, or BIS, is the new survey Rio, the main researcher, set up for her research method. It coincides with another survey called the MMP, that is a binational household survey that collects data using the method of ethnography, which is just a combination of ethnographic method and survey method. The MMP has a random sample of 150 to 200 households from a selected number of communities in Mexico. The BIS had to incorporate some restrictions due to having it integrate with MMP, such as the respondents were required to be between 15 to 65 years old males and currently working in Mexico or intending to work in the U.S. or Mexico. The surveys were conducted in specific communities based on their socioeconomic diversity. These communities range from a population size of 2,000 to more than 1.6 million residents. In all, 1,657 men participated in the surveys and created an effective sample size. The precaution of also excluding the small number of respondents who intended to migrate illegally, legal permanent residents or tourists, and do not intend to migrate but are U.S. citizens or legal permanent residents was made to make the sample more effective because it only contains individuals who are at risk of unauthorized migration. The major findings turn out to be that the decision to migrate illegally cannot be fully understood without considering an individual's underlying values and norms. The ethical concerns the researchers were aware of was the respondents' compliance with the questions about illegal activity. But based on Rio's personal observations during the focus group process before the actual survey and the actual survey itself, there was little reason to believe respondents were less than forthcoming in their answers. I believe that the most interesting element of the study that would intrigue a sociologist was the research method. It was complicated because two different surveys were used, yet their results coincided with each other to determine whether the hypothesis was made was right or wrong. I believe that the most interesting elements of the study that would intrigue a person who maybe works on migration patterns are the results, because this research could help their work on predicting and assuming migration patterns from Mexico to the U.S. A different research method that could have been used would have been to use existing sources of data, such as criminal records involving illegal immigration, and using that information to conclude results about unauthorized migration. This article is very relevant due to being an issue that has been brought up a countless amount of times, and also because it is an illegal activity. I believe this article enlightens the general public on the true amount of people that intend to migrate from Mexico legally, and overall better understanding of what unauthorized migration is and isn't. That's all. Thanks.